What if we just need to make more is exactly why it still doesn't feel like you're getting ahead? I've seen two households earning around $250,000 land in totally different places. One is stressed, cash flow feels tight, taxes feel like a joke, and everything's scattered across random accounts. And the other is building real options, same income, different outcome. And right now, between higher for longer interest rates, sticky cost of living, and tax brackets, mistakes get even more expensive faster. In this video, I'm going to take you step by step up an income ladder with 3 steps and show you how the money game changes at each level. You'll learn what most Canadians do, where it quietly goes wrong, and what a clear, repeatable strategy looks like, so more of what you earn turns into future choices, not disappearing money and mental load. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jacqueline Osdemer, a financial advisor with Ferguson Financial Planning. Day to day, I sit with people who've done a lot right. Good income, good careers, money set aside, but the plan still feels a bit scattered. Too many accounts, too many good ideas, and tax season feels like a yearly surprise. My job is to turn that into one clear system you can actually run. And in this video, I'm going to walk you up an income ladder and show what changes as your household income grows in Canada. We'll cover 3 steps. First, how to build a simple base and stop the leaks. Second, how to coordinate savings, investing, and taxes so you're not guessing. And third, how to structure income, corporate money, and legacy decisions on purpose. If this helps, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe with the notifications on. Now, let's start with the income ladder. Let's start on the first step. A household income around $150,000. At that income level, you're already above the Canadian median household income level. But if you're sitting here thinking, we make good money, why do I still feel behind? You're not imagining it. There likely are a number of financial priorities that are stretching you in multiple directions. At this step, life often looks like this. You've got a mortgage or rent that takes up more of your cash flow than you expected, maybe kid-related expenses that keep showing up in new categories, and you're trying to juggle RSPs, a TFSA, maybe a group plan, and an RESP that only gets funded when there's leftover room. And somehow, even with good jobs, the credit card doesn't fully return to zero. For context, the average credit card balance in Canada was about $4,500 last year, and credit card debt has been rising quickly. That isn't a character flaw. It's what happens when costs rise faster than most people's incomes. Here's what usually goes wrong. People save what's left over instead of saving first. They invest while carrying high interest debt, which turns progress into 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They open accounts based on whatever their bank suggested that day, not based on a plan. And they treat big goals like the kids' education or buying a home or getting breathing room as side quests. So at this step, the mission is simple. Stop the leaks, build a clean system, and make the next step easier. If you're around $150,000 of household income, the most valuable thing you can do is pick a savings rate you can repeat. Not once, not when you get a bonus, but repeat. For a lot of families, aiming for roughly 15 to 20% total savings is a solid start, counting RSPs, TFSAs, group plans, even mortgage payments. And the secret, if you want one, is boring. Automate it right after payday. Next is getting your accounts to match your tax bracket. Because RRSP versus TFSA isn't a vibe, it's math. The RRSP limit for 2026 is up to $33,810, and the TFSA limit for 2026 is $7,000, with cumulative room now up to $109,000 if you've been eligible since 2009. At this step, a common move is if one spouse earns a lot more, the higher earner may lean harder on RRSPs, possibly even with the spousal RSP, while the other keeps the TFSA moving forward. If incomes are similar and you're not consistently in the top brackets, it often makes sense to keep both RRSP and TFSA contributions progressing instead of defaulting to only one. Then there's the practical foundation, high interest debt and an emergency fund. If you're carrying credit card debt at roughly 20% interest, earning 6% in an investment account doesn't offset that drag. The priority is to pay off expensive debt first and then build a cash buffer of about 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. That buffer gives you breathing room so an unexpected cost like a car repair or a medical or dental expense doesn't force you to derail the rest of the plan. Here's a simple example of a couple. Both 37, household income around $150,000. They decide to save 20%, roughly $30,000 a year. If they invest $30,000 each year for 20 years and earn a 5% real return over a full market cycle, that's roughly $1 million in today's buying power. And that's before raises, before promotions, before the second step. That's the point. At this level, consistency beats creativity. Now we're on step 2. Around $250,000 of household income. This is where many households are doing well on paper, but money still feels more complicated than it should. There's more coming in, yet decisions multiply and taxes start to matter more in a way you can feel. And at this step, life usually expands. You may upgrade the home, travel more, increase spending on children's activities. Maybe you're supporting aging parents or simply take on higher day-to-day costs that come with a busier life. It's rarely reckless spending. More often, it's incremental spending that builds quietly over time and reduces the margin you expect to have. The most common issue I see here is what I call default saving. People prioritize the RSP because it's familiar, contribute to the TFSA inconsistently, and add to a non-registered account without a clear role for that money. If there's equity compensation, such as an employee share plan or RSUs, it can accumulate without a deliberate plan until a meaningful portion of your net worth is tied to the same company that pays your income. That's a risk many people don't notice until it's already large. So what do you do instead? You start measuring progress in a way that reflects the full picture. At this income level, net worth becomes a more useful scorecard than income alone. Income tells you what you earn, net worth tells you what you keep, what you control, and how resilient your plan is. A simple quarterly review is often enough to track your net worth, confirm your savings rate, look at where the surpluses actually went, and then adjust your automated contributions so your priorities happen by default. And at this step, it's realistic for many households to target roughly 20 to 30% total saving, especially when bonuses are treated as part of the plan rather than automatically absorbed into spending. Here's where step 2 becomes meaningfully different. Small decisions can have a large impact because there's more margin to work with. The key is to apply that margin intentionally rather than letting it disappear through a mix of good intentions and uncoordinated choices. Let's use Sarah and Daniel. They're 42 and 44 living in the GTA. Their household income is around $250,000. They have about $650,000 remaining on their mortgage, roughly $300,000 in combined RRSPs, about $80,000 in TFSAs, and around $120,000 in a non-registered account built through a series of ad hoc investment decisions over time. Their savings rate is approximately 12%, but it isn't clearly tracked because contributions are spread across multiple accounts and mechanisms. The first step is to define what retirement means in practical terms, not an age, but an after-tax spending target. For example, they may want about $120,000 per year in today's dollars to support future lifestyle, travel, and occasional support for their then adult children. From there, we model the plan using reasonable assumptions and stress tests. In a baseline scenario, saving 12% and earning a 5% real return, they may look on track for age 65. But the plan can become fragile later in retirement, especially if they experience a poor market early on or if spending remains consistently high. Then we test 2 changes. First, they increase total savings from about 12% to about 22%. On $250,000 of income, that's an increase of roughly $25,000 per year in additional savings. Second, they reduce monthly spending by about $1,000, focusing on recurring expenses that accumulated over time rather than one-time cuts. Together, those 2 changes materially improve resilience. The portfolio grows faster, and future withdrawals represent a smaller percentage of their total assets, which really reduces long-term risk. Now, we layer in taxes. In Ontario, at this income level, marginal tax rates are often in the low to mid 40% range. That means a $15,000 RSP contribution could reduce tax owing by roughly $5,000 to $6,000, depending on the specific bracket and deductions. The key is what happens next. Instead of letting the refund blend into general spending, direct it deliberately to a priority such as the TFSA, the mortgage, or a planned non-registered contribution. Used this way, refunds become part of the system, not a pleasant surprise. Now, rung 3 of the ladder is household income of $400,000 or more. Sometimes that comes from 2 high T4 incomes. More often, it may involve a corporation, equity compensation such as stock options or restricted share units, maybe multiple income streams or meaningful business cash flow. At this level, taxes become a central planning variable. In Ontario, the top combined marginal tax rate on regular income is just over 53%. At this step, the basics are usually in place. The challenge, though, is complexity. You may have an operating company, possibly a holding company, personal and corporate investment accounts. You may have insurance, real estate, maybe equity programs through work. The risk is not that you are doing the wrong things, it is that the pieces are not coordinated around a clear objective and a clear path to making work optional. The first priority is to design how money moves. If you are incorporated, the salary versus dividend decision is not only about minimizing tax this year, it does affect RSP contribution rooms, CPP contributions, your ability to qualify for financing, and how predictable your income looks over time. In many cases, a blended approach can make sense, but it should be a deliberate decision that is reviewed periodically and coordinated with your broader plan. Next, corporate investing can give you some real leverage. It is common to see large corporate cash balances sitting in investments that feel safe but deliver weak long-term results, or portfolios where fees have drifted higher because nobody has reviewed them in years. Fees are one of the few costs you can control. If you have $1.2 million invested inside a corporation and you're paying an extra 1.5% per year, that is about $18,000 annually. That's every single year. That could fund additional savings, reduce future tax pressure, or simply buy time back. Consider this. Case study of an incorporated specialist who is married, 52 years old, and retaining about $250,000 per year inside their corporation. Personal RSP assets are around $600,000. The couple's TFSAs are around $160,000, and the corporate portfolio is around $1.2 million, held mostly in GICs and higher fee funds. The concern is not that they are failing, it is that they do not have a clear timeline for when they can reduce work, and they do not know which decisions matter most. When we tighten the compensation approach, modernize corporate portfolio, and map the retirement timeline with tax-aware withdrawals, the outcome is only better numbers. It is a plan that is clear enough to act on. At household incomes of over $400,000 or more, a good plan stops being only about day-to-day optimization. It becomes about your family, your business, and decisions that may not feel urgent today, but become urgent quickly if life changes. Legacy planning can sound intimidating, but in practice, it is largely about keeping the essentials current. Do you have up-to-date wills and powers of attorney? Are the beneficiary designations on RRSPs, TFSAs, pensions, and insurance aligned with your current intentions? If you have a corporation, is there a clear plan for what happens in the event of an unexpected death or disability? When these items are outdated or incomplete, the result is often unnecessary delay, extra cost, and avoidable stress for the people you are trying to protect. This is also where more advanced planning can be appropriate, but only when it fits the situation. An individual pension plan can sometimes increase deductible contributions for certain incorporated business owners. Corporate-owned life insurance can even play a role in estate planning and tax-efficient growth in the right circumstances. And of course, estate freezes and family trusts can be useful when there is meaningful scale and a clear objective, such as a business expected to grow significantly and a defined plan for who should benefit. These tools are powerful, but they should be chosen based on purpose and fit, not adopted by default. Finally, cross-border considerations matter more than ever. More Canadians are working partially in the United States, taking remote roles, or considering spending part of their year abroad. If that applies to you, tax residency and departure planning become important. Timing can affect departure tax, treaty rules can change how registered accounts and pensions are treated, and withholding taxes can create surprises if the structure is not planned ahead of time. This is not about aggressive tactics. It is about avoiding costly mistakes by getting the planning right before the move, not after. So if you're on this step, the goal is straightforward to state and more involved to execute. Align each moving part around a single direction. Personal planning, corporate structure, estate documents, tax strategy, and timeline should reinforce one another. When that alignment is in place, the outcome is not only efficiency, it's clarity and choice. So here's the big takeaway. The right move changes as your income climbs because the problems change. On the first step, your job is to stop the leaks and build a simple system you can repeat, automate savings, match accounts to your tax picture, and keep expensive debt from eating your progress. On the second step, it's less about working harder and more about directing the extra margin. That's where tracking net worth, managing concentration risk, and using refunds on purpose into a plan that actually holds up. And then on the third step, structure matters. How you pay yourself, how corporate money is invested, and how your estate is set up can be the difference between feeling stuck and seeing the fog clear. If you don't set this up, taxes and messiness slowly win. If you do, you buy options. So that's the ladder. The higher you go, the less that it's about hustle and the more it's about structure that keeps taxes and messiness from slowly winning. Now I'm curious, what step feels hardest for you right now? Stopping the leaks, coordinating everything, or getting the corporate and legacy pieces set up on purpose? Drop that in the comments. I read all of them, and they may inspire a future video. If this video helped, please subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a future video. And if you're at the point where you don't want another spreadsheet or tips list, if you want an experienced team to design and implement a plan, coordinate with your accountant and lawyer, and keep the whole thing running, there's a link below to book an introductory meeting. It's simply the first step to see if we're the right fit to take this on with you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.